Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Pat Cosentino, the Superintendent of Region 12, and I am here today with a special guest, our Chairman of the Regional 12 Board of Education, Jim Hirschfield. Jim has been on the board for 16 years. He's a wonderful leader. And Jim, thank you for joining us. And I always start by asking people to tell us about themselves. So tell us about yourself and your family. And
all right, well, thank you for having me. I live in Washington. My wife Robin and I, we have two daughters, both of who went through the Region 12 system through K through 12. My oldest daughter Laura is graduated from the University of Alabama a year ago, well, in last December of 11, and my youngest daughter Margaret is graduating from UConn in Stores in May of this year, and she's just been accepted to veterinary school, so she's thrilled, and of course we're thrilled.
That's wonderful.
She's put in a lot of work. I have, on this June of 2013, I'll be finishing my 4th term on the Board of Education. They're 4 years each. So I will be, as you said, finishing my 16th year on the board. It's been very rewarding. I've enjoyed my time on the board, and I've been serving as chair, I don't know, the last 3 or 4 years or so, and I've been very honored to do that. Great,
excellent. Tell us what are really the roles and responsibilities of being a Board of Education member?
The primary, in my estimation, the primary role of being a Board of Education member is to set policy for the overarching running of the school district. We're not there to micromanage the system. We're to set a broad policy. We do make approvals of some specific items if they're major items. And the main goal of the Board of Education is to improve student achievement. That's our main interest, and there's a lot of things that affect that. The board, one of its primary obligations and roles is to hire a superintendent of schools. That's the only person the board hires. The superintendent is the chief executive officer of the system. The superintendent reports to the board. We have meetings, Board of Education meetings twice a month, and more than that, there's all kinds of committees going on. Board of Education members, there's 12 members on the Region 12 Board of Education, 3 from Bridgewater, 3 from Roxbury, and 6 from Washington, based on population. And the members put in a tremendous amount of time volunteering for their Board of Education duties. So the board hires a superintendent, and the superintendent is charged with running the system and reporting to the board and bringing major issues before the board, and the board makes, as I said, makes policy for running the system. So that's the main job.
Excellent. So when I came on board officially July 1st, you had, I guess, commissioned a committee under the supervision of Jonathan Costa from Ed Connection to develop a 5-year strategic plan for the region.
Right.
And there are 3 main goals. A lot of different objectives under the goals, but 3 main goals. So let's talk about that for people so they understand where we're moving. So goal number 1 was a curriculum goal.
Right. Again, a lot of work went into this. There was a large committee spearheaded by Mr. Costa, and the 21st century curriculum. The state has now passed these Common Core standards.
Yes.
And which is an extensive overhaul of the curriculum, which is ongoing. And so that's very important to the board. You report to the board as to how that's going, and then I believe that we've made significant progress in that area, although there's a lot of work yet to be done.
Absolutely. And you'll see just one of the things off the top of my head is the elementary schools are going to be adopting a new math program based on the Common Core. So they are in the process of piloting the programs, and then they will come to the board with a recommendation. So that's what we're doing with the curriculum, making sure it is based on the Common Core standards, which are very rigorous. Then we move to goal 2, which is more of a technology goal.
Right, is to help bring the system into the 21st century. We're in the 21st century, and the board is very conscious of that. The board has authorized the expenditure of significant funds in its budget to upgrade technology. Wants to stay ahead of the curve on that. I don't know if it's possible to do that, but I think a lot of progress has been made making this system, trying to keep up with technology. We recently passed a policy allowing students to bring their own devices to school. the students are in many ways much more advanced in the use of these devices than board members are, or even the staff is. And so we decided not to fight the tide. But part of that was our policy committee. Michelle Gora is the chairman of our policy committee, and they spent a significant amount of time with the staff and with Karen Files and others coming up with policies by which these things would be done appropriately to make the students proper technological citizens, how they communicate, what things they're allowed to use, etc. So I felt that that was a huge step for us, and I'm very pleased about that. So the technology is a big part of what we do. It's screaming ahead of us faster than we know. The changes we all see every day, and so I'm very excited that the board is doing that, has recognized that as a priority, and is keeping up with that to the best it can.
Yeah, absolutely, and I have to give the board kudos for that, because they are being proactive in that area, and you know, with the purchase of all the smart boards, with upgrading the wireless connections and all of the servers, etc. at the high school. We're bringing in Power School, which is a program that parents will have access to teachers' grade books and student grades, all of those things. And hopefully next year bringing in Chromebooks for our 9th and 10th graders, which are little laptops that they will have and use in every class that they have. So we're really excited. I think we've made a lot of positive growth in technology in the short time that I've been around. Then we have long-range plan goal number 3, which has to do with the declining enrollment and the escalating costs of educating children in our region. So talk about that goal.
Goal number 3 has to do with how this region, the citizens of this region, are going to operate their school system in the future and over the long term. We're not talking about the next 5 years or even 10 years. We're talking 20 years and 30 years. We do have a declining enrollment in our system. It's been projected to decline even more over the next 10 years. And the question is, how will the citizens and the taxpayers decide that the system should be run? We have old, aged school buildings, primary school buildings in each of the 3 towns, in Bridgewater, Roxbury, and Washington. We have the Chippewa Middle High School campus. And the question is, what are we going to do? How are we going to run our system going forward? And you know, how efficient do we want to make it? And so that's the goal of that goal. Is to have that brought before the board. I know you're doing a lot of work. I'm sure you'll talk about that, and have the board at some point put an option forward to the towns for a vote at a referendum as to whether, you know, yay or nay on the option the board chooses.
Exactly. And so we are doing a lot of work. Let me just review the options for people so they know them. One is status quo, which would keep all of the 5 schools, 4 buildings as is. We don't necessarily think that is an option based on the work of the committee, but we wanted to put that in there so that this way we have a benchmark of where, if we do nothing, what it will cost in 10 years. We have building a total new pre-K to 5 building on Chippewa, taking down the Chippewa building and putting up a new building. Then we have an option of renovating Chippewa, where you would keep the middle area, we call it the mall, with the pool and the gym and the cafeteria, and then on the right side, closer to the tennis courts, you would put an addition which would house the 6 to 12 school, and then on the left side you would put an addition and house a middle pre-K to 5 school, excuse me. And then that's an option. And then the other option is to keep Burnham open, make it a themed school, but keep everyone else up at the Chippewa campus. So there are a lot of different options on the table. We're hoping that our committee will be able to make presentations in March and eventually weed it down to 2 options that they'll bring to the Board of Education. with a referendum hopefully in the fall. We'll see what happens. I have my fingers crossed. It is a lot of work, and the committees, I want to thank everyone who is joining us on these committees. It is a lot of work, and it is difficult work because there are difficult conversations. So we're moving in that direction.
And I would like to say that with regard to the studying of these options, that you and I have met with the three first, more than once, we've had meetings with the three first selectmen and the three chairmen of the town's boards of finance to get their input. It's in addition to the work that you've done with citizens and staff members, a lot of work that's gone in. But that at some point, the politicians, the selectmen, will have to have the town meetings, and invariably they will probably face questions from citizens as to what a certain option that's not before them, what would that have cost, or what would this have cost if we had done that, and they want to make sure that they have that information. So that's why you're going through this process now of studying these options, the 7 or 8 options that you have in detail, coming and costing them out, and we're spending money to do that, and costing them out so that we have good numbers. But at some point the board will have to decide. The committee will present two options to the board, and the board will have to choose one to put forward to the citizens for a referendum in the fall, hopefully in the fall.
Good. Okay, so now let's talk about the budget. I'm going to make my presentation on March 11 to the Board of Education, and why don't you explain what happens after that?
What happens is you make your presentation that night, explain it to the best of your ability. The board thereafter would typically schedule budget workshops, in which time the board would have the opportunity to go through the budget in detail, line by line if it so chose. And whether that took 1 meeting or 2 meetings or 3 meetings, whatever it took, whatever the board needed, at some point the board would vote to approve its budget. In other words, the budget you present to us is your budget, and at some point the board will vote to approve its budget that will be presented to the towns at referendum, which is normally done in early May. And so that's how it works. The board puts a lot of time into it. I know that you will have put a lot of time into it to present your budget, but then thereafter the board will go through it. And the board is very sensitive to economic conditions in our towns and in our state and in our country these days. And I know that you're using a very sharp pencil, you and your staff, and we're looking for efficiencies, but yet wanting to provide the best education for our students that we can, that the citizens are willing to pay for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I am doing. I am going and looking carefully and making sure we're using our resources efficiently and effectively. That includes not only staff, but building space, resources, extracurricular monies, all of those things. So that this way we're really, doing everything we can to be fiscally responsible, but provide an excellent academic education for our students. Tell us what's the best part about being a board chairperson or just a board member.
Well, I view my job as board chair. The primary job, I think, of the chair is to run the meetings, is to run orderly meetings, get the business that's brought before the board done in an orderly fashion. I am a liaison with you. If there are things that you and I need to discuss, we do that. I try to be open and honest with the board. There's no secrets going on. So that's my job, and I try to do that, run the meetings as best that I can. And we many times have a lot of business before us, and we can be there all night if the meeting doesn't progress in an orderly fashion. Being a Board of Education member, and I am just one of 12 Board of Education members. There are 3 from Bridgewater, 3 from Roxbury, and 6 from Washington, based on our populations. And no one Board of Education member has any authority or any power by themselves. Of course, they speak to their constituents, and they have their ears bent about certain things, but the only power or authority that the Board of Education has is when it sits together as a Board of Education. Then it is actually an arm of the State Board of Education. And so when I say that the members speak to their constituents, their real constituent, in my estimation, is Region 12. It's not the members of a particular town from which you were elected, although of course the citizens of your town, you want to take their concerns into consideration and give them due weight when you're deliberating and making decisions. But when you come together as a Board of Education, your constituency is Region 12, in my estimation. And as I said before, the board makes policy for the region, and so that's a big responsibility. We're dealing with students from kindergarten through grade 12, and to know that the policy that the board sets will guide the education, certainly guided by the superintendent and the staff who deal directly with the students, but knowing that we have an overarching guidance by policy setting is a big responsibility, and I know that every board member takes it very seriously.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you work very hard. As you said, there's 2 meetings a month and many committee meetings, and you really scrutinize what we're doing, bringing in the best programs for kids, making sure the curriculum is up to date, supporting technology and the different initiatives. So it really is, you're doing a wonderful job. The board is very supportive, and the community members out there need to be very grateful for all of the 12 members who work very hard to keep the region moving in a positive fashion. I just want to add just a couple little things before we wrap it up. As we work on preparing for our students so that they are career and college ready, I mean, that's what we think about. What are our students going to do when they leave Chippewa? When they're in 12th grade and they're ready to graduate, what are they doing the next day? That's what I always try to say to parents and to kids and to teachers. What's the plan? And that's why we work so hard to make sure that everything we do is focused in on student achievement. And it is a big responsibility, and we all take it very seriously. I want to thank you for joining us. I think it's been a wonderful show. I want to let the community members out there know that you are always invited to board meetings.
Absolutely.
They are posted on our website, in the town's halls, and on their websites. I do have a weekly newsletter that goes out that any community member can receive as long as you send us your email. So if you call my secretary, you certainly can get that information. We are a region that is on the move. We are working very, very hard to make changes that are necessary to keep up with the changes in the Common Core, with changes in technology, and preparing our students to be ready for the 21st century. So thank you, Chairman Jim Hirschfield.
Dr. Cosentino, thank you, and I just want to say I think you're doing a great job, and appreciate all the work that you and your staff are doing.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Everyone, keep watching Channel 17. Stay in touch with Region 12 by visiting our website, and we'll see you soon for our next show.